Hello and welcome to Trojan Talk. I'm your host, Walter Givhan, and I'm Senior Vice Chancellor for Advancement and Economic Development here at Troy University. My guest today is the world's fastest Trojan, Lieutenant Colonel Ed Yeilding. And as a fellow Air Force pilot, tremendously proud and pleased to have you with us to tell us a little bit about your world record transcontinental crossing in the SR-71 back in 1990. Thanks for being with us today, Ed.
Thank you. Good to be here. Appreciate it.
Tell us a little bit about the SR-71 and what made this record possible.
The SR-71 was one of America's premier reconnaissance jets for 25 years of the Cold War, starting back in 1964 through 1990. The world's fastest and highest flying airplane, exciting to fly, and I was extremely fortunate to fly it for 6 years. Then in 1990, Congress voted to retire the Blackbird. The Smithsonian Institution wanted one for display after retirement, and they asked us to set a transcontinental speed record when we delivered it from California to the Smithsonian. And the purpose of the record would be to help call the public's attention to what a great airplane it has been for our country for 25 years of the Cold War. So JT Vita, my RSO navigator, RSO stands for Reconnaissance Systems Officer. He flew in the back seat of the Blackbird. It was a two-seat airplane, pilot in the front, and then RSO in the back. We were just in the right place at the right time and asked to fly that flight from California to the Smithsonian. So they wanted a coast-to-coast record, so we took off at March the 6th, 1990, flew 200 miles out over the Pacific Ocean, air refueled, got a 200-mile running start. The NAA, which is the agency that monitors and verifies official records, started the clock when we crossed the West Coast, and then when we crossed the East Coast, they got the time. And the Blackbird had just set a new transcontinental speed record, coast to coast, 67 minutes and 54 seconds. So our cruise speed was Mach 3.3,
wow,
which that day, depending on temperature, that day it was about 2,190 miles an hour, so we were faster than a speeding bullet all the way across the United States.
And just to clarify, Mach 3.3, Mach 1 is the speed of sound, so you were going over 3 times the speed of sound when you were going.
That's right. Our flight manual limit was Mach 3.3. We normally did not exceed Mach 3.2, but I had special permission to take it right up to the flight manual limit, so that was my cruise speed, Mach 3.3, 2,190 miles an hour, all the way across the country.
And what altitude were you flying at as you did this?
We climbed to 75,000 feet, and then we did a cruise climb after that. The airplane is more efficient fuel-wise, and fuel was real tight for that flight. So as we get lighter, we're more efficient being a little higher. So we started our cruise at 75,000 feet, gradually climbing, and when it was time to come down, we were at 83,000 feet, and we did a descending left-hand turn as we crossed the East Coast and flew back to Dulles.
And tell me, how hot does the skin of the aircraft get at those kind of speeds?
You know, near 80,000 feet, the stratosphere is about minus 70 degrees Fahrenheit. But friction with the air causes the airplane to get really hot, and the skin averages about 550 degrees Fahrenheit. So parts of it get much hotter than that. So Kelly Johnson, the famed Lockheed designer, designed the airplane and made it primarily out of titanium so it could take that high temperature. And he designed in expansion joints in the airplane, so because at that high temperature, the airplane grew in length about 4 inches during the flight due to the high temperature. And then when it cooled down and after landing, it would shrink about 4 inches.
How did it feel after you landed and you knew you'd set the record?
Oh, we were real excited. We knew we were very fortunate to fly that record flight. We climbed out of the airplane, shook hands, and JT and I did, and we were excited because we had just flown the world's fastest airplane and set some new records, but at the same time, I have to admit we were feeling sad because that was going to be our last flight in the Blackbird and to be the last time the Blackbird would ever fly.
And where is that aircraft now?
We landed at Dulles, which is just west of Washington, D.C., and it sat out of public view for the next 13 years. And the Smithsonian built a new museum at the south part of Dulles Airport called the Udvar-Hazy Center. And the airplane is now displayed nicely right in the center of that museum. And that museum opened on the 100th anniversary of the Wright brothers' first flight. So that was opened December the 3rd of 2003, 100 years after the Wright brothers' first flight.
That's great. Well, Ed, thank you so much for being with us. We at Troy University are very proud of you.
Well, thank
proud
you.
to call you a Trojan.
Well, thank
and we really appreciate your being with us today.
Thank you.
Thank you for joining us for today's edition of Trojan Talk.